Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope doing well, and today I'm going to be talking about something that's been getting a lot of coverage by a lot of different YouTube channels, and I wanted to give my own 2 cents on the so-called conspiracy, controversy. It's really hard to say because it's honestly something that is in reality happening, but I think that the reasons behind it or the speculation as to why it's happening might be somewhere, at least the truth, might be somewhere in between some of the things that other people are saying. I'm going to give my own perspective on it. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I am someone who used to work at a movie theater. I worked at a movie theater for several years, and I can tell you for just my own experience working up even in management that this report has a lot of problems with it. So as you see, this is on Bounding Into Comics. So again, this is a pretty good website. I've heard a lot of people sing praises of them. I don't usually dive into their articles too much just because, as I've said before, I'm more of a movies guy. I'm more of a box office guy, and so I tend to stay away from anything that's dealing specifically with comics. But of course, because the MCU is very much a part of the Marvel Comics division, Bounding Into Comics is doing a lot of coverage of the Captain Marvel situation. And so as you see here, as of March 13th, and this is something that dates back even longer because opening weekend, we were already getting reports about this, saying that there were apparently new reports of empty theaters at Captain Marvel, adding to the movie's controversy. So there was a controversy that came up opening weekend when people were submitting their own screenshots, their own pictures of them at the theater, claiming to be at a certain time, claiming to be right before showtime, and saying, hey, look, the theater's empty, and this doesn't seem to indicate that the movie's doing very well, and yet the box office numbers are saying something very different. Other people were trying to say, hey, look, I'm on the Adams Tickets app, or I'm on the Fandango app, or I'm on the websites app, and it's showing that it's at full capacity or half capacity, but then I actually go into the actual movie itself, and no one is there. And so there has been this speculation that Disney has been buying up tickets, has been buying up seats to try and make it seem like Captain Marvel is doing better than it actually is. Now, am I saying, do I think that it's possible that Disney could do this? Yes, I think it's possible. Do I think it's likely the reason why this film has done so well? No. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, as I've mentioned, because I've worked in the movie industry, because I've worked at a movie theater, that has never, ever happened before. In the 3 to 4 years I was working there, at no point during any of the MCU releases did that ever happen, because there were people that did show up on the night when I myself went to go see Captain Marvel after having supported, maybe, allegedly, Alita Battle Angel with my ticket. There were already a lot of people there. The movie theater was packed. Not nearly as packed as I've seen it before. I even covered this in my vlog when I covered all of it, that I've seen bigger packs before. I've seen bigger theaters before. I've seen much more people supporting Marvel films before. However, even though that was the case, there were still a lot of people there in line getting concessions, and also in the theater that I went into myself, which I would say was probably around 75 to 80% at capacity, which was overall pretty good, especially for an IMAX showing. And so, again, speaking just from my own experience working at a theater, knowing that that's never happened before, where a theater has been bought out ticket-wise and people just haven't shown up, I just know that that's just not really seeming to be the case. I think that there might be a reason as to why this is happening. I'm not trying to say that the people saying that their theaters are empty or anything like that are lying, and I'm not even trying to say that the people who are saying, hey, look, this is what the app says, but the reality is not actually the case, or the theater managers that are talking, etc. I'm not saying and claiming that I know that they are lying, because honestly, at this point, I don't know. But what I'm just speaking of is from my own thought on this, and also just based off of the numbers that I myself have crunched on the movie, it seems to indicate to me that this movie has opened up in a gigantic number of domestic screens, a gigantic number of screens even in China. And when you look at the fact that it has opened up in so many, and most importantly, you look at the per theater cost, or rather the per theater gross, you make sense very quickly. Because it opened up in so many different theaters, it offered a wide variety of showtimes, a wide variety of access, and so of course, normies, as they've been called, go to see the movie. Normal, everyday people, general MCU fans, etc. Maybe people, I would say for the most part, who have no idea about any controversy whatsoever, are going to go to support this film, or to go see this film and not really, be any wiser. And so they'll come out of it with their own thoughts on the movie. Again, and overall, the reaction has been mostly mixed. I don't care what CinemaScore says, because CinemaScore has a very, very just non-transparent, just not straightforward system, I would say. And so for anyone to try and say, oh yeah, they're very trustworthy, really, where's the data? Where are the cards themselves? Who are the people filling out the cards? Is it always consistent? Is it always at random? What markets do they go in? Do they only go into major cities? These are very important questions, because those will definitely influence the type of person going to see a movie in any given area, and therefore the type of score that they are likely to give to a movie. With all that being said, though, when we look to this and we look to the box office numbers and we look to the fact that just based on the numbers we've been given, we can indeed break down, okay, let's look and see how much other Marvel films have made per theater. Well, let's go ahead and look to Black Panther. Black Panther made roughly in its opening weekend $50,000 per theater. So a lot of people were going to see it. And it was also available in less screens than Captain Marvel was. And so not only did it not have as much access, but also in the places that did have access, it was outperforming by being able to sell more tickets at the actual theater itself. When you compare that to the $35,000 that Captain Marvel was making per theater that it was being shown, per actual physical location it was being shown, you see that that drop, that less than, is not just because it has more screens and therefore the division causes the number to go down. What it means is that per theater it was not doing nearly as much business. And so when you take that into account, there's a very logical explanation as to why theaters are half full, some theaters maybe even being empty, some theaters only having a few people, etc. It makes a lot of sense that that would be the case. Now, as far as the people saying, okay, well, what about, you may have been able to explain that, but what about all of the seats that have been said that they are filled when in reality they are not? There's also a wide variety of ways that this can also be explained. And again, I'm not saying that Disney did not buy these seats, but it very well could be that some outside organization wanting to support this movie, wanting to pad the numbers, that was not Disney, very well could have said, all right, well, we're going to go ahead and use the money that we have to buy out tickets. And maybe, just maybe, especially for the ones saying, oh, why is it the same 4 seats every single time are being sold? Well, that one actually makes a lot of sense to me because I know of, because my wife works for an organization where they have tickets to the theater, not to movie theaters, but to the actual theater itself. They have they have specific seats that are meant for certain groups of people. And so therefore, every single time a show, a play, a musical comes into town, they have those same seats. So to me, it actually makes sense because what about radio stations? What about other organizations in general who tend to give out free tickets to movies? Do you not think that in the age that we currently live in, that they would likely, possibly in some situations, already have those seats predetermined and pre-picked out? I know it's a little bit odd. I know that some people would say, no, they would more likely get a voucher to go see it and go see it on their own time. But at the end of the day, too, when you think about how the fact that people were probably raffling off tickets and saying, hey, I have tickets to go see it at this time. Also, too, don't forget, scalping has grown significantly because now, because of the fact that you're able to buy tickets in advance, it's very easy to buy your ticket, pick it up from the theater, and then say, hey, here you go. I'm going to go ahead and give you this ticket, but I'm going to charge you a certain amount for it, etc. Again, I know that might sound even more because, oh, you're creating even more of a conspiracy on top of that. No, I'm not, because I'm saying that I honestly don't know why it is that there are certain theaters that have the same seats several times in a row, or why there are certain theaters that say they're going to be full but actually aren't, or why any of that's going on. What I'm trying to say is that there are other explanations other than some giant Disney conspiracy. And I'm not trying to take a jab at any of the YouTubers or any of my friends who've been covering this story online, because I think that they're just taking everything that they're being given and taking it from their own logical perspective. And I think that it's definitely one that is a potential possibility. It is a potential possibility that Disney not only did it for this film, but has done it for other films as well. Maybe we just haven't been paying attention before. Now, in the age when you can see just how many seats, and not only that, but which seats have been sold for any given movie at any given time, it's a lot easier for us to see that. I would like to say and think, though, that I honestly believe that there's going to be more of a logical explanation, because there really, again, until there is actual financial proof, until we can actually show that Disney in its expenditures has spent money on theater tickets and spent money on this, other than just speculation and other just trying to connect dots, we really don't have a whole lot. And also on top of that, if you're going to try and tell me that they did that Disney bought so many tickets that they were able to push Captain Marvel to this gigantic worldwide opening, that just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Especially, as I said, when you do the per theater pricing, the $35,000 it made per theater domestically, and then you spread that out even more so in all the theaters that it came out in the foreign market. Again, it came out in a lot of markets at the same time, on the same day, which is very rare for a lot of these big MCU films. The fact that it had the same day opening release in China is something that happens very rarely, and so therefore it was automatically bolstered by that. But as we've seen in China, the China number is dropping off significantly, so it might only be able to eke out 150 million at best, and if it's even bigger drop than I think that it might actually be, it might even be close to a Last Jedi kind of drop, where it drops 97 100+%, and maybe gets pulled out early, again, it's still a little too early to tell, then at that point we'll see, okay, so now the world is starting to catch on, now people are starting to wake up to it, and so this film eventually will peter out. Now, as I said before, we don't have the full box office numbers yet, but what we do have is pretty telling. Again, what we do have is pretty telling overall. First, of course, we still have the media that's continuing to spin its wheels to try and push this movie and protect this movie. Again, Deadline says Captain Marvel rising to second best second weekend in March. I love these fake records where it's like, oh my gosh, it might not be the best, but it's the second best second weekend in March. Okay, we get it. You love this movie. You want to protect this movie. You know that creating these headlines are going to make people click on it, and you know that people are going to be like, going crazy over this because they're tired and sick, and they're just so sick of you trying to push this agenda. Again, we understand it. We get it. Stop it. Please stay focused on the actual numbers themselves instead of trying to say the second best. Just say Captain Marvel makes $609 million. And I know you got to make your titles clickable. I understand that point to it. But this is actually the number that I'm not really looking forward to, because also keep in mind that this is still very much an estimate, and based off of the Friday estimates that we have at this time, it might actually even be harder for it to get to this number here. And the reason why is because, as you see, $594 million. So that was the big milestone, is that it's over $200 million domestically. It's also over $400 million worldwide. So therefore, it's over $600 million worldwide is, again, the big number there. Again, as far as how much money it's made overall, that's a pretty impressive headline. Again, that is a pretty impressive headline. But what I'm looking at, as I said, is the drop-offs. And so as you can see, let me just make sure I can refresh it to get the most up-to-date number. As you can see there, the estimate for Friday was $19 million. When you compare that to the $61 million Friday, which includes last Friday, which includes the Thursday premieres, we see a 69.1% drop. Now, some people might say, oh my gosh, like if that stays true, if that percentage stays true for Saturday and Sunday, we're looking at a Last Jedi drop-off. And that would indeed be true, because The Last Jedi had a drop-off of around 67-68%. However, this is not, and this is again why I wanted to make this video too and talk about this aspect of it, this is not the largest MCU drop-off that we've had from Friday to Friday. That actually would probably go more towards those like Ant-Man. Ant-Man and the Wasp, for recently, just as the most recent MCU film prior to Captain Marvel, had a 75% drop from week 1 to week 2 as far as the Friday openings are concerned. So it's not the number one biggest drop-off, but it is still a big drop-off nonetheless. And if we know anything about Ant-Man and the Wasp, it made a sizable amount of money, but nothing to write home about. What I think Captain Marvel is going to end with is it's going to have just a gigantic opening, but also have the same giant drop-offs that many other films have, maybe even larger drop-offs in certain areas like China, and that's going to lead to this film maybe being able to not only match a Doctor Strange type number in the $700 million range, but also maybe even get all the way up to and maybe matching, if not exceeding, the Wonder Woman range of around $850 million. It's still very possible at this moment. Again, as of today, it's reached past $600 million. Depending on what the drop-off is, we'll be able to determine and be able to decipher exactly how close this film will get to the billion-dollar mark, because that is still a possibility at this point, because yes, 69% domestically is not good, but it's also part of the story. We don't know what the Saturday drop-off is going to be. Again, it made $52 million last Saturday. If we see close to $19 million on a Saturday, it's going to probably be more, because remember, this number is normally, the Saturday number is normally going to be bigger than Friday, because you have the entire day off, people are going to bring their kids, etc. And the reason why some people say, well, what about this Friday? Well, that has Thursday and Friday. The actual Friday total itself was around $40 million, jumped up to $52 million because more people had time to go see it throughout the day. And then, of course, Sunday is also normally a drop-off. This, I think, was a pretty big drop-off for any MCU film. And then, of course, the Sunday to Monday drop was one of the biggest drops in the MCU with 71%. So what does this mean going forward? This means that this film is still making money. This film is, at this point, regardless of what the actual profit, or rather what the actual cost is, because that was what me and Jeremy on Geeks and Gamers were talking about, was that we saw this Deadline article that seemed to indicate that the break-even number was $750 million. And then when we read it over and over again, we realized, okay, so basically they were telling us the $524 million to $725 or $750 million, that somewhere between those numbers was the so-called break-even number. And so I was kind of asking myself, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense, because I've been saying from the very beginning that $400 million is the break-even, because in order for the film to make its money back, 60% of $400 million would make up for the production cost, or at least the reported production cost, and also the marketing, which is normally about half. What we found out from Deadline, though, is that they said the entire cost of this movie, including marketing, was roughly around $300 million, which means it probably is more, because 300 is just a little bit too on the nose. But let's just take that as fact. Well, then if you take $500 million as a break-even number, you take 60% of it, boom, you get to that glorious $300 million break-even point. So it's already made more than that. It's already making profit. The question, the doubts that all of us are having is how much money is it actually going to make by the end of its run? Based on these numbers, though, it looks like it's probably going to peter off. And I would say if for this weekend we see something similar to a Last Jedi number, I do not think that this film is going to be able to have the legs to reach the $1 billion mark. But again, that still depends on what we see from Saturday and Sunday, and also what we see from the rest of the foreign market outside of China, because that could also make up for any losses that it might have in China. The point, too, is that for those people, again, pushing the narrative that this is, again, some kind of conspiracy, that empty theaters are a conspiracy, and that this is indeed something that, that is being totally put together by Disney, and Disney is just trying to make this movie look better than it actually is. Again, could that be the case that they've bought some tickets? Sure, it's possible. But there's also a lot of other possibilities that make just as much sense as well. Yes, they wanted this movie to do well, but guess how we know that they were able to guarantee that? They had it open in almost every theater in the United States and also in almost every major country, including China, on the same day. That was a guarantee for a giant opening weekend. And when you have a movie that makes that much money and has even just mixed word of mouth, you're going to be able to make small profits after. And if you've already made close to $400 million rather, opening weekend, it's going to be very easy overall to get to the point where you're being profitable. But anyway, that's my thought on all this. As I said before, I'm not going after anybody. I'm just looking at these numbers here, because this to me is where I find the truth, is the numbers that we're getting. Yes, I know some people are going to say, oh, well, those numbers can be flubbed, and there's a history of it, and go back and look up the articles about how studios in China have flubbed the numbers before, and yes, that's all true. But until we see evidence of that other than just here are some empty theaters, when we already know, too, that the per theater making of this film is not as well. Again, you can do the math on that yourself, that what it's making per theater is not very strong. Well, then we're able to figure out from there, okay, so that explains why there's half theaters, empty theaters, etc. Because it's doing well in certain markets, it's not doing well in other markets, and any tickets that might have been bought in advance and people not shown up could be explained in a variety of different ways. So this is the reason why I myself have taken it upon myself, and I know that there's others who are doing it as well, and many are offering help. Thank you very much for that. But to try and create a new safer space, not safer space, but a more honest place for movie reviews in general. Again, we go back to the infamous RottenTomatoes.com, which still has this as certified fresh with 79% and a 62% fresh audience rating, which we already know they plagiarized. We already know that they played with. We already know that they cooked this book by deleting reviews, by subsequently releasing certain reviews over time. And also, too, because we can look to the fact that the average user rating is 2.8 out of 5, which means that this is a terrible score and it's not a very good movie, and yet somehow it's still in the fresh rating because we know at this point. Again, I had the whole gigantic stream covering this fact that they were deleting reviews and only releasing positive reviews, or releasing positive reviews in a higher volume than negative reviews to try and bump the score up closer and closer and closer to it. Finally, it was fresh, and now it's at 62%. It probably will stay here because Rotten Tomatoes is a show website that wants to control the narrative, and because of this is why I've created my own website. So ombreviews.homeblog. I know it's not the best website. I know, at least you could buy a domain name. It's all going into the works, guys. Again, this is just a starter project. This is to build interest. This is to test certain things out, to see what people like, what people don't like, and all that stuff. Again, this is basically a learning experience for me, and it's also a way for you to guys have an outlet, at least a more quick outlet, because it's going to take a long time to build anything more than this. Obviously, it gives you a quicker outlet to be able to talk about movies openly and honestly, not have to worry about being censored, to not have to worry about your reviews being deleted, etc. And so I have pages for all the movies that are currently in release, all the movies as they are about to come up, broken down by month. And each of these pages, I have their release dates in it as well, their trailers. You can put whether you're interested in a movie or not. So let's just go to Captain Marvel, since that's what we're talking about today. Again, 98 people said they wanted to see it. 754 people said they didn't want to see it. Out of 538 ratings, as you can see, I'm not deleting ratings here, 3.5. So I, again, think that's a pretty fair score overall. And 88 people have left their thoughts, either their ratings on this page or possibly also their reviews of the movie Also, I'm also in the process of playing around with a couple of things too. So I'm playing around with this thing which is called Omjob right now. So Omjob, I know it's a very weird name. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but trust me, it's a working title at the moment. But what I'm doing is on Twitter, I am posting links to different movies that you can put your own score into. But the way that you put your score in is not just by clicking out of 5 stars, but instead going into the 10 biggest aspects to every single film and leaving your thought score 1 out of 10. How strong was it for any given movie? So as you can see right now, I have got the Aquaman job on the screen, and it has, again, acting, editing, cinematography, etc. And then people can just rate how strong each category is. So what I get from that is an average score, an average rating, and then what I can do is add those scores up and then give you an official job score for the movie. Again, don't worry, the name is a working title, but what it does is it gives you a newer rating system to be able to look forward to that is a bit more honest. Instead of people just being able to click half star, half star, half star, then they can say, okay, I can at least say the acting in this movie was pretty good, even though the editing may have sucked or the cinematography may have sucked. So this is meant for people who have seen the movie and are willing to try and be honest with themselves, to say, okay, I can say that this part was good or this part was bad, etc. And therefore, we're going to be able to get a little bit more of an honest score overall. So again, I'll post some links to this in the description of this video. And also, please let me know in the comments. Let me know on the website. Again, there's a contact page on the website too. Let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know things you want to be added. Let me know movies that you want me to add. Right now, I'm just keeping it to movies that are in release or about to be released. I'm also slowly putting out other movies that have already been released on DVD. So I do have a page for Aquaman, Creed 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, Bohemian Rhapsody, etc. So again, email me those recommendations. If you're going to go try and go back a couple years, several years, I'm not going to put those movies up just yet because, as I said before, this is a way for me to learn a little bit more about website building. This is a way for me to learn a little bit more about how to grow an audience, about how to get some interest up, things that you actually want to see. And that's what the purpose of this is, with eventually the goal being releasing a fully functional new reviews website for people who just want to know honestly what people think. And I know that you already maybe have your website that you go to, like a Metacritic or an IMDb, but I want to be able to create something new, something a little bit different as well. And so I'm testing things. So if you could help me out, I would greatly appreciate it. And you guys are awesome. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. Have a great day. And as always, please, if you like this video, smash the like button, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful weekend. And as always, God bless.